we're going to get started. We'll wait for a couple more people to come in, but in the meantime, let's talk about what we're doing. We are Okay, let me back up for a minute. So let's talk about what we're doing. Hey, Miss Belinda. So to get started, and of course you know me, I'll go over it again. I am working on, thank you for the rose. I am working on a sew along. And so the sew along is sponsored by the Fat Quarter Shop, and they are located at www.fatquarter.com. They have a ton of free patterns, but they also sell patterns. They sell fabric, they sell notions, they sell swag. So you can absolutely purchase a lot of items from the Fat Quarter Shop if you're interested in buying something from there. Hey, from South Florida, how are you doing today? Cookie Beth. So welcome, welcome, welcome in. My name is Jennifer Hale, lightly known as Dr. Jen, and I am so excited because I am working with the Fat Quarter Shop to introduce their items that they have, as well as to participate in some sewing events, activities, and one of them is this free sew along. So there are some of the sew alongs when they come along where we will purchase items. I did purchase some items. This was an absolute scrap stash buster. So this is the pattern, and the pattern is Brave and True Americana. And what we're working on is a piece of the quilt. Hey, Charmaine. So this is the piece of the quilt. It's just the table runner. So it's like a row, if you will. And you can see the actual quilt right down here in this corner because it was too much like right to make a copy of the actual quilt pattern. If you get the quilt pattern, make sure that you get the whole Brave and True Americana quilt pattern because that's where the directions are. If you want to know how each piece is cut, all the materials that you will need, you need to get the full pattern, and it's still free. So this one's free and that one's free. This is just the sew along. So the sew along for what we're doing is just making this table runner. Again, it's just a piece of this. The directions for how we are going to do this for the sew along is here. Now, y'all know me. You already know that I absolutely will make this whole thing in one night. But I am going to follow the rules for the sew along. So here they are. The first week, which is by tomorrow, because of course I'm behind, we are going to make only two of the log cabin blocks. Now, personally, I would just get rid of all four of them done, but I do want to show a different technique, so I am going to hold off on two. So I'm going to only work on two of the log cabin blocks tonight. I am going to chain stitch these because it's easier. Then I will, the next week before April 19th, is it 19th? Is it the 16th? The 16th. So before April 16th, before next week, then I will work on two more. And it doesn't mean it'll have to be Tuesday, but Tuesday might be the day. On that following week, I'm making the two Red Star blocks. That's this one and this one here. So we will make these the following week. And then on April 30th, we make this blue or the white star. We're making this one. And then it's to finish the quilt, which is to go all the way around and add the border for the quilt top. So as usual, you already know me. You know I am not about to quilt it all in the same night. Creations by Lizzie. This is a Fat Quarter Shop. www.fatquarter.com, fatquartershop.com, and it is a free pattern. So you would put in your little search bar, Brave and True Americana, and you could get the pattern there. There are tons of other free patterns on their website as well that you can get. So this is a two-parter. So this one is the actual table runner for the sew along. And then this is the actual quilt that gives you all the information. But both patterns are free. Yes, ma'am. So again, I suggest you get both, because when I got the pattern, right, and I looked at this and I said, okay, cool. I got all the directions for what I need to do. Okay. I know how I need to make each block. They tell you all the fabrics here that you could purchase if you want to. There is a disclaimer down here at the bottom for the sew along that says, of course, you could use, but if you're sewing along, use your own stash anyway. But for me, I could use my own stash for this. I did change this just a little bit in here. We'll talk about that. But they do give you the codes, the SKUs, if you want it to look exactly like this. But again, that's personal choice. For me, just to make a table runner, I think it's easier to use your scrap, because maybe at the most I used 4 2.5-inch strips of each color. And if I were making it even more scrappy, it really doesn't make sense to go out and buy a 1/4 yard of this, a fat 1/4 of that, unless they sell it as a set, and you're still not even going to use all of that fabric. But if you're going for the actual quilt, then it might make better sense to do that. Then on the second page, it was like cutting instructions for the border, the blocks and the binding, and then here's the finished thing. And it took me a minute. I was like, well, wait a minute. How am I cutting these? Now, I'm good. So I absolutely can figure out. I hate when this happens. I have to turn this around. So I can absolutely figure out what each of the blocks are in this. I hate reading things backwards. So I can absolutely figure out that each of the blocks were about 2.5 inches each. And then I could figure out what to do with them. This was going to take a little bit more work to think about. But once I realized, oh, there are directions. Then it was like, okay, got you. But they probably said it somewhere here in the directions and I wasn't reading it. So again, the directions are for the actual blocks are for the Brave and True, the quilt itself. It is free. And then you follow this if you wanted to participate in the sew along. If you're participating in the sew along and you want to make them, then you would just do hashtag Brave and True SAL for sew along, and then that way everybody can see what you're doing. So this sew along is again free. I am bound to these dates, but if you're playing catch up, hey Miss Rosalind, if you're playing catch up, then you absolutely could start your blocks, let's say next week, and finish all 4 of these log cabins. So you have the 1 log cabin block here, 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 and here. So we need a total of 4, but we're only working on 2 at a time. This is very user friendly because you have 2 weeks. You have a whole week to make 2 blocks. And then you have a whole week to make 2 more blocks. And then you have a whole nother week to make the 2 red star blocks, and then another week to make just this one, which is the same as this, except different colors, and then add that border. And then that will be done, and then you can absolutely quilt this. And this, because it's a table runner, can be a quick walking foot, just straight line, stitch in the ditch, however you choose to quilt it. It doesn't have to be anything great or grand. Okay? So again, Brave and True Americana. This is by Fat Quarter Shop. This is one of the many sew-alongs that they have. There are a ton of sew-alongs. Okay, no problem. I was wondering, where you were in your process. But that's fine, Miss Rosalind. I always appreciate you to be here. And we do need to figure out what we're doing for next Sunday if, you don't have family obligations in terms of Sunday service. So anyway, moving on. We have, again, Brave and True Americana. This is a sew-along. It started already. And our first 2 blocks need to be done by tomorrow. And then every week after that, there is a schedule. So you will see me for the next, this Tuesday and the next 3 Tuesdays, and I will be working on completing this. Okay. So we will talk about that one in a minute. Okay. So I did some prep work. Because there were some things that I needed to figure out because the math wasn't mathing for me and I couldn't figure out why. So I do want to share some things and I will talk about my plan for those things. In their directions for this, down here, there is the Log Cabin Quilt Block Foundation Papers by It's So Emma. And you can purchase it from the Fat Quarter website, Fat Quarter shop website. So you can absolutely purchase this. You only need 4 of the sheets, and they are all, that we're using for this. So if you want to use it for other things, you can. This will make a 12.5-inch unfinished block. So here is what this looks like. And, remember I am backwards because I mirrored this, so I have to remember my orientation for this. So this is what the tablet looks like. And inside of here are all the paper piecing blocks that you could use for your log cabin block. If you are a seasoned quilter, you're like, I'm not using that, which is what my attitude was. But I will say this, the measurements for the block and the sew along go along with this. So there's some squaring up, if you will, that you will have to do. And it's not that bad, but there's some squaring up that you will have to do if you don't use the foundation paper. And I just went ahead and got it because, hey, why not? But again, also because I wanted to show it both ways. So this was great because I'm going to show you the way that I did it this week. And then next week, I'll show you this method, and I will show you also what the difference is for why there was a suggestion for the foundation paper and why you might choose to use it. Especially because of the way that I always end up doing log cabins and what they end up looking like. Let me not put this underneath of my table because next week I won't know where it is. Okay, so here is a sample of my block. And for this, it is Brave and True Americana, and it is patriotic, so therefore it is red, white, and blue. There is a little cream in here just because I did want to have a little bit of contrast with this, so I went with a little off-white, but it's still red, white, and blue. In the pattern itself, especially for the blues, but they did it for the white too, they really scrapped this up. So they used like 2 of these dark blues in 2 different prints. They used 2 of these in 2 different prints, 2 in these in 2 different prints, and then the same thing with the white. I just went ahead and said, if it was this color here, I used the same color here and all the way through because I didn't need to make it as scrappy, and I wasn't convinced that I had that many blue pieces because there's actually 6 different pieces of fabric that you would need, 6 different types. And so because you would need 6 different types, you would have to find 6 in your collection, and the colorways would have to be there. You should, if you look up Brave and True Americana, you should find it. Keyword is should. The word is always should. And let me do this real quick, Brave. Because there's always a shortcut whenever I am doing something, and I am absolutely going to find it when it is a shortcut involved. So you should have found the quilt, and of course my my phone wants to do. So what I would suggest is instead of going right to their site, right, just type in Brave and True Americana Sew Along. You'll get, and then, they may call it the quilt along. So this one may be the link. I know the other one works. This one takes you to 50 billion other things. But here's the pattern right here. Okay, so you could just do a Google search. It's easier. And then if you scroll through, because the Americana is a whole series of fat quarters. So if you will, and this is on their site right now, I love this. And if I had bought this in time, I absolutely would have gotten some of these because, oh, they're absolutely adorable. But again, if I scroll down, you'll see both patterns. So they'll have the quilt pattern and they will have the sew along, and the key to this is 0 and 0 because they're free. Okay, awesome, you found it. Okay, but like I said, get both patterns because it just makes sense, because you're gonna need them. Okay, so again, we have the we have the foundation paper. If you look close enough, right, you can see where some of my blocks, and I'm not pointing this out because I'm saying I'm not perfect. What I'm doing is I'm saying I had to do some finagling because this was meant to be used with foundation paper in order to create perfect log cabin, the logs, right? But you could do this on your own. You just have to trust the strips that you have and square it up as you go. So we'll show that today because, again, I can absolutely do it that way. And that's the way I got this one. Great. You got it. Awesome. Okay. So this is the finished block because, again, somebody has to make sure that she has stuff right before she goes on live, because when stuff don't work, then she's looking a little crazy on live and she doesn't like to look that way. So I do make sure that I'm straight before I go. Okay, so we're going to get started. So thank you everyone for joining me. Thank you for tapping the screen. Thank you. We are doing the Brave and True Americana Sew Along for Just the Table Runner. This sew along is sponsored by the Fat Quarter Shop. It's at www.fatquartershop.com. This is a free pattern. It's a free sew along. The only thing that you are using is your stash. You can absolutely use your stash. I know what I was saying beforehand. So here are all the runner fabric requirements. They do, again, this is the assumption that you're buying things off of their site, even though you don't have to. So they tell you straight across what you need. So the background is considered the white, and they give you 6 different colors that you could use. Again, up to you. I chose to use 3. So I just did the same thing twice. I didn't bother to make it really scrappy. The same thing then when you get to the blue, there are 8 different blues that you could use. I wasn't doing that, so I stuck with at least 3 for now, and I may, in this star right here, use a different set of blues because I do have them, and I'm thinking I have one that's really going to pop for this, so I may choose to use that. But again, this just kind of gives you a guide of how many different colors you could use, but you could plan it out any way that you want. The red, you only need 1 red print because of what's going here and here. For the red, the multi for the border, which is going around, I picked out something for that. You get your blocks in your binding, and then, the backing if you want that as well. Again, they're just telling you what you need, how much you need of it, but you absolutely do not have to purchase their fabric to be able to do this. Again, the pattern is free. They also do suggest the 12-inch, and 12-inch means 12-inch finished. The 12-inch finish is a 12.5-inch unfinished log cabin quilt block foundation paper by It's So Emma. And again, that's on their site, but I'm going to show you what I did today because I didn't have it. I have it now, but I didn't have it when I was preparing for it. So I said, well, let's do it the way that I know how to do it, and then we will go back and do it the other way. And I like both ways, and I'll tell you the reason why. Not everybody starting out with quilting or always through these projects, especially now that JoJo's is, going away, we're going to have to make some decisions on how we purchase. So we're not going to have the coupons and the 60% off like we did at JoJo's when we go to Walmart or possibly to Michael's or Hobby Lobby. Hobby Lobby does a 50% off of their fabric. Not really. They do some things with their notions, but it was never the deep discount that JoJo's did. Thank you for the follows. Thank you for those of you who are tapping the screens with the likes. Thank you. I appreciate it. So in order to get started, I have already done some pre-work, and let me slide this over. These are all 2.5-inch strips. So to complete this project, it only required 2.5-inch strips. Some of them are squared down or cut down to different measurements, but it's just 2.5-inch strips. So you could take the fabric that you have, and let me pick something that is not going to embarrass me when I open it. So we'll take this blue. So I already pre-prepped this. You can take your fabric, and then using your ruler, you can cut your 2.5-inch strips. And then you cut as many 2.5-inch strips you need. After you've cut this, and again, I did these from selvage to selvage, so I just used the whole width of my fabric. Then I subcut them into the individual units that I needed. I like to use my 2.5-inch ruler whenever I'm doing it because it's easier. So I subcut first my red. This is the center just for the log cabin. And then I cut those pieces into 2.5-inch blocks. So these are 2.5-inch squares. They're done. Then using the measurements that you found on the full quilt pattern, because that's where you're going to find it for the log cabin, I cut everything else. But again, started off with the 2.5-inch strips, and then I cut those down. Each of these blocks is going to be doubled in a sense. So the red is a single, and then this is one, and this is another. So you're going to have 2 of these white pieces unless you're making it scrappy. Then you're going to have 2 of these, and then 2 of these. 2 of these blue, 2 of these blue, and 2 of these blue. Unless you're going for the completely scrappy look, and then it's 6 altogether. Okay, so all of these pieces are done. Some are shorter than others because once we start to do this, you'll see how they come together. And again, I'm going to have to do some squaring because I'm not using the foundation paper piecing, and this was designed for that, but we can still work it. Our end goal is 12.5-inch blocks. That's the end goal. So we can make this work even though we are not using foundation paper. So totally your decision. And again, if you are new to quilting, you might say, you know what, after next week, I'm going with that foundation paper because that was much easier. Or you may say, YOLO, I can do this without it, and I absolutely don't need the paper. So to get started, we need to take our center blocks. We start with our red, and then we're going to work our way almost like in a circle. One thing about tonals, like when you're using like white on whites, and this is considered white on white, and I'll show you, you can see the design. So it's just one type of white, the white print, if you will, or design is on top of the white fabric, if you will. So it's called white on white. You got to make sure that you're not putting the wrong side up. Trust me, if you look closely at some of my quilts, you'll see that I've messed that up. But I try to look to see. Good lighting helps. And you want these 2 pieces to go together. Right sides together. And you're going to line these up. Nice and even. I do use a 1/4-inch foot when I sew because why work harder? when you can work smarter. So anything in quilting for the most part that we do usually requires a 1/4 inch seam. And so since it requires a 1/4 inch seam to do most of what I do in quilting, it just makes sense to get a 1/4 inch foot. But you could absolutely tape off your area for perfect 1/4 inches. You could use tape. If your foot measures a complete 1/4 inch without the guard, you could use that. So I have my 1/4 inch, and I can open this up. Usually the rule of thumb when we are pressing these is we usually, if we're pressing all to one side, is to press to the dark side. Hi, Livette. How are you doing this evening? So we press to the dark side. It's up to you if you prefer to press your seams open. I prefer to press to one side, but you can absolutely, press them open if you like. I press to the dark side because if I go and finish this, what happens is the darker fabric is going to show through on the white side. And if it's red or black or any other color, it's going to really stand out. And you don't necessarily want that if you can avoid it. Sometimes it is unavoidable. So I'm going to press to this side. So I'll take it to my iron. One of the beauties of quilting is that we do not iron. We press. So I can lay my iron right on top of that. That's going to just press my thread flat. Then I'm going to open this up and I can just leave it there for a second because all I want to do is just press that open. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome everybody in. Thank you for joining me for the live. Even though I've posted the live, and I will pull this up several times throughout the live, I am working on the Brave and True Americana. This is a free pattern from the Fat Quarter Shop. It is a sew along that they are sponsoring this month. If you want to purchase their fabric, you can, but the pattern is free. There are 2 parts to the pattern. There's this for the sew along, and in this corner, you have the actual quilt. Both of these are free on their website, and the easiest way is to just Google Brave and True Americana sew along, and you can absolutely go right to their page and get both of those patterns as a free PDF download. Okay, we are working on the first 2 blocks, which are the log cabin blocks. Okay, I will go ahead and do the other red one, but just this way because I like to just go ahead and chain things because I don't have time to do them individually. But this looks like this. You'll see it's pressed to the dark side. This is ready to go. Now, so let me go ahead and get the second one done. I cut out 6 units each. And the reason why I did 6 units each, there are 4 total for the table runner of the log cabin blocks. So you need, my thread is doing something funky. So you need 4 units just to do the log cabins. And because I don't trust myself and I had to do some things in advance, I made 2 extra units. So I made a total of 6 when I cut these out. So you do see extra units here that are in front of me, and that's the reason why you see extra units. It's because I went ahead and prepped myself for next week. It doesn't make sense for me to prep just this week and then to turn around and prep next week. It was easier for me to sit last night and just do everything at one time. Hi, Coco. How are you? How are you? Awesome. Okay. So I finished this one as well. So I have 1, 2 blocks that are done. So these blocks are done. I have 3 left because I've already made 1, and I have these 2 to go. I could really set these aside out of my way. So then in this, all we're going to do is just keep going round and round and round. Hey, Donna. Again, I need to, did I look at that one? You sure enough didn't, girl. Okay, they're right. Okay. So again, I need to just check my fabric because I am good for getting the wrong side. And sometimes it's just very hard to tell which is which, but you know, really pay attention. And we're just going to lay this right one on top of the other. And again, this is meant for the foundation paper piecing method with the foundation paper piece. So the pieces didn't line up the way that I thought they should have. And I thought that was very interesting until I said, oh, well, that's because you're supposed to be using the foundation paper piece. So I was like, okay, not a problem. I'll show you what I did. Hey, Carmen. I'm going to keep this going in the direction that it's supposed to be going in. So my red should be on my left-hand side. And that's going to put my red on this side. It's going to put my white at the top and on the right. And my blue on the side and on the bottom. And then I'm going to just do a stitch. And again, because I'm chain stitching, I'm going to do both of these. And again, I'm going to have to do some squaring up because this called for foundation paper. And yeah, I didn't use it. And the great thing about this is that you don't have to. It just is going to require a couple extra steps, but this is actually absolutely doable. You're not going to stretch your fabric to make it meet the ends because it's not going to. Okay, so we chain piece. So that was one right after the other. They are attached, and I just snip them apart. It saves a little extra thread. Okay. Again, I can just place my iron down on here because I don't need to iron it. I just want to press it so I get those seams nice and flat. The goal is not to leave it on there too long to burn your stuff up. And it'll lay nice and flat. And again, if you press, again, remember we said if we're pressing to the dark side, well, there's white on this side. So this is going to press to the white because they're both white. But the great thing is at least the fabric underneath of this is white as well. Okay. So again, just pressing that open. Okay. I like to lay everything back down. To square this up, I'm just going to use my ruler. I'm in line with the seam a little bit. And I'm just going to cut off the excess for this. And that's because there's just a little bit of excess because they really wanted me to use foundation paper and I didn't have to. What I also found was that the center square measured about 1 and I will say a little less than 2 inches. And so I was like, okay, so maybe if I took that down a little bit, but it works out fine. So I do want to follow the same pattern that I did. So I'm just squaring it up. Get everything nice and even. We'll throw those little scraps into my bin because I can use them for something later. My reds are facing in this direction. And then I'm still going around in a circle. So my next color is blue. I need 2 of these. And I will need 2 of these. Hey, Nina. Happy Tuesday. What they say, so what did somebody say? Happy 3 more days to spring break. Oh. So then we're just going to go. Remember we said the blue is to the left and the bottom. The white is to the top and the right. So we're going to lay these down. Right along those edges. We'll take those edges and we'll take them back to the machine. Because of the way that I pressed everything, I will make sure that my seams are going in the right direction so they're laying nice and flat. And again, welcome in everyone. I am working on the Fat Quarter Shop sew along. It is a 4-week sew along. We are only making 2 blocks today. They are log cabin blocks. Traditionally, they wanted them to be foundation paper piece. We are working around that because, yeah, I didn't have the foundation paper piecing pieces, but I have them now. So I will do those next week when I do the other 2. Again, chain those 2 together. We'll snip them apart. So it's great to keep a pair of small scissors or snips next to your iron in your machine, just because you will do a little bit of snipping. I'm going to press those seams, that thread flat, like they like to call it, and then I will press those seams open, and I am pressing really to the outside. So everything is just getting pressed out. Okay, I will lay this back down so that you see that. Oops. Well, let's not poke ourselves with this. Okay. There's a little bit of squaring up that I need to do. I like to measure from the seam because that will guarantee that my seam is straight. So I'm using the inner seam to line that up. And I'm just kind of cutting that excess off. Okay. And it shouldn't be much excess that you're cutting off. If you're cutting off like a whole inch, something's wrong. You want to make sure everything is as straight so that your blocks do not get real loopy or wonky. Okay. Again, you'll notice my red is here, my white and blue. And this is because somebody has a tendency to mix up her order, and so this helps her to keep that order straight. So I will always place it back in the right position so that I'm making sure that the order is right. And again, we're going in a circle. So we did this one first, this one second, this one third. So now we're at the bottom. So we went from the right to the top to the left to the bottom. They're both set up. Let's take it back to our machine and stitch. And this, I mean, really is the process all the way around. There are a couple other quilt-alongs that are coming up for Fat Quarter Shop. We have another one in May. I will be posting that because now, you know, I said, like, doing this is like having a job. So now I have another job. So I have assignments for when I need to post. I have assignments for making sure that I get things done at a certain time. I'm loving it, but yeah, I have to get that done when I need to get that done. So again, everything is stitched. We'll take this back to our ironing pad, which is great. This is one of the reasons why with quilting, it is great to have an ironing pad right next to your machine so that you can press everything open. Carmen, like let me mind my business and just sew, right? And now, like I said, I got a whole job. So I got to remember stuff. Remember to mention Fat Quarter Shop. Remember to mention Fat Quarter Shop gizmos and gadgets. This is all Carmen's fault. I'm just going to say that. I'm going to speak it. I'm going to speak what it is. This is all Carmen's fault. Okay. So here we go. So far we're getting this. It's working. We have our white on this side. We have our blue on this side. I'm trying, girl. So the next one is our next set of whites. And these aren't they fun? So these have little squiggles in them. And they're going to go right here. I don't know about being an influencer. I just know that I was like, let me not say no to something, and then I gotta talk to boss lady about why I said no. So here I am. Okay. So again, we stopped at the bottom with the blue. We're going here, and then we're going here. So I'll need 2 of these, and I can set these 2 aside. And I'm just moving them out of the way. Typically, if I were doing all of them at the same time, then there wouldn't be any. But because I have to save the ones that I'm going to do for next week, I will have those. Because, yeah, I follow directions from time to time. So I am following directions for this. And again, we're just chain stitching. But I do like to lay it flat, because if you don't lay it flat, then what you will find is that you might end up going in the opposite direction. Ask me how I know. And then it's like, and if I can help it, I'm telling you, if that foundation paper piece had me seen ripping more than a little bit last weekend, I'm not in the mood to see rip anymore. I'm just pressing. So the stitches here, your thread just is rolled a little bit. So just pressing on top lets them lay flat. And then what happens is it helps the seam to lay flat when you go ahead to press it open. So all I'm doing is just letting the iron sit on top of it for a couple seconds just to lay that flat. I really don't need to do much more beyond that. If I feel like adding steam or starch, I can do it at the end. Most of my pieces were already starched ahead of time. Okay, so I need these 2 pieces. Again, I'm going to lay these out the way that they're supposed to go, so I'm paying attention to what's going on. Look, because I'll tell you the first time I wasn't doing that. Okay. So here we go, and we'll lay this down. And again, it's a little short, but that's okay, because we're just going to square it up. Because this was intended for the foundation paper piecing, and since we're not using that this week, we have to do a little squaring up. But the good thing is that each of these blocks, when I finish with them, it's going to still, because of the strips themselves, it's still going to give me, it's still going to result me a 12.5-inch block. So some of the strips may be a little thinner than others, but I'm not worried about that, because really nobody's going to be able to tell. And again, this is just a way around not having the foundation pad that they are recommending for this quilt. And let's be honest, before they had foundation paper that I knew of, this is the way we were doing log cabin quilts. I was like, foundation paper? Where'd that come from? So that is something that's new, but you know, us old school quilters, this is how we did it. I must say that the foundation paper, when I show you that next week, I get why they said do it. But, okay. Guess who lost the bobbin chicken? Okay. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, guess who has bobbins downstairs and not upstairs? Okay, so I will take a station break for a bobbin. Thank you, Christina. I try. And it has to make sense to me as well. And so because it has to make sense to me, sometimes I feel like I over-explain. And I think that's also like the teacher in me. Because sometimes the students don't get it on the first try. And so because they don't get it on the first try, it just makes sense to, let me explain it this way, or let me try it this way, and, you know, see if they get it. Because the goal is that by the time the students, you know, get to do whatever it is that I want them to do, I want them to be independent. I want them to think on their own. So I think sometimes that's why I over-explain, but then everybody loves that over-explanation. Hey, Latoya, how are you? Okay. So somewhere in there, I have like 2 machines set up. And I have a machine downstairs set up, and I have a machine upstairs set up. So I think last night when I was doing something, I said to myself, oh yeah, I got enough white bobbins. They're downstairs. Okay. So, but that's fine, because my Husqvarna Viking that Julian is not here to hear me say, threads, I mean, I can do a bobbin very quickly. So that bobbin is done, and I'm only doing 2 blocks, so I don't need like 50 billion bobbins to do these blocks. If I were doing a whole quilt, I might actually thread a couple bobbins. Okay, let me pull that through. Let me pull this up, pull the bobbin thread up, and then put the lid back on. Okay, here we go. Now, this one is the one. Okay, clip clap. I am doing very well. I had a nap. I came home. They had a workshop at away from the school today, which we got out early, and we were all like, wow, we've never seen this early. We see daylight. So I came home and took a nap. Okay. So again, I press, and I'm going to press this open. And again, I'm not pressing the seam open. I'm pressing the seam out. I do press with my seams being closed. I'll turn it around just so you can see that. I do not open up all my seams. And that's just an old school method. It's, it's the way that quilting used to exist years ago, required a better result by closing, by keeping your seams going to one side rather than opening them up when you did the quilting process. So that's why folks did it. But nowadays, with the way that people quilt, it doesn't matter whether you press them open or you keep them closed. Again, you'll see that it's a little off. It's not my measurement. This was the way that it was designed for the foundation paper. And we're not using that this week, but we will absolutely use it next week. I thought it was important, even though I received the paper in time, I thought it was important to show this both ways, because not everybody's going to buy the foundation paper, and you can absolutely do this without using it. So I did want to show that process without using it. Okay, so again, my red is going to go this way. So that puts my white on the right and at the top, my blue on the left and at the bottom. Thank you for 2,000 likes. I appreciate everyone. We use this blue. I don't know why that's in there. Okay, so we're in our second blue. Let's pull out 2 of the shorter ones and 2 of the longer ones. Okay, we'll set that aside because we don't need that until next week. And we'll start with the shorter ones. And we went, remember, we're going in a circle. So this to the white, to the white, to the blue, to the blue, to the white, to the white. And then we go to the blue. And I'm going to start in that upper corner. And that the reason, again, I'm doing that is because of that foundation paper. I'm just cutting off that excess. No big deal. Because this will still work. And unfortunately, this is what's happening when you change the method just a little bit, which is fine. Okay, everything's lined up. Again, on this side, we'll trim this up, and then we'll add that blue on this one. Welcome in. Again, everyone. I am working on a sew-along sponsored by the Fat Quarter Shop. It is a free pattern called Brave and True Americana. So, you know, when we're quilting, we get ready for stuff early. Some of us do. I don't, but I mean, I'm doing it just because, you know, that's a sew along, because I'll wait until last minute to do anything. But this is, you know, we're getting prepped for Memorial Day, for the 4th of July. We're thinking about that decor for those two holidays, and we need something patriotic in the house or at work, wherever else you would like it to go. And so this is absolutely a stash buster. I had everything in my collection already, and I didn't need to purchase any fabric. The next sew along that I do in May, I absolutely purchase fabric from the Fat Quarter Shop. So that will be here hopefully sometime this week. And when I am able, I will do an unboxing of that fabric, and we will talk about that upcoming project. For you, you know, you can either do the fabric while I'm doing the sew along, or you can use your stash. Okay. That would help if we opened it up, right? Okay, and I'm just pressing that. I'm doing fine, Latoya. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for joining me. This is not a whole quilt for the sew along. This is just a table runner, and what we are required to do today is just the 2 log cabin blocks. I do have to square the blocks up because this calls for foundation paper, and I received it late, but I also thought that it was important to show how to do this without the foundation paper, because log cabins were originally made without foundation paper. So don't let that be the reason, like, oh, I can't, you know, I'm not going to get that, so I can't do the project. You can absolutely make it using the measurements and still have the, you know, final result in the end, even though you don't have the foundation paper. Okay. So we have these two, remember, in a circle, and so we finished the blue down bottom. Okay. And again, you'll see the difference next week when I work with the foundation paper, and you'll see why people prefer it to not using it. Me, my attitude is, you ain't gonna be able to tell the difference. But there are perfectionists somewhere in the world, and I am not one of them. Okay. And we have one more round to go. So we have one more round of white and one more round of blue. And our log cabin block will be finished for today. The 2 will be finished for today. And then we have 2 more next Tuesday that we'll work on. So I guess since this stuff is due, I guess since these are due on Wednesday, in terms of the post, then I guess I'll be on live on Tuesdays, because Monday ain't the day. So Tuesday is a better day to do this, to take my time, and I can also get a nap in before I go on live. Because sometimes the little cherubs at work wear me out. And I need to take a nap before I have to think and sew. Okay. It is a 1/4 inch seam all the way around. We had this debate, and I know Carmen may be going now, but we had this debate on Sunday. Most quilting is a 1/4 inch. There are very few exceptions to the rule when we're not doing a 1/4 inch. We will do a 1/4 inch. We will do a scant 1/4 inch. A little bit more than an 1/8 of an inch, a little less than a 1/4. So sometimes when the directions are not there for the quilt blocks, it's because it is a 1/4 inch. Hey, how are you doing, Miko? Okay, and then we'll press this one out. So the great thing that I love about this is that when I thought about doing this sew along, and they told me I could use my my stash, I was like, yeah, you know I got red, white, and blue in the stash. So me being able to use this fabric was not a problem, because I was like, I know I got enough of it in my stash that I don't think I had to buy anything for this. I happened to be out and I saw this fabric that I liked, and I absolutely had to have it, but I did not have to buy anything to do this particular one, because yeah, I already have enough regular colors in my stash that I don't have to purchase fabrics. But again, you could purchase the fabrics if you need to. Okay. I'm going to line this up with that edge. I am using my mat as well, but I'm using the edge as a guide because I don't want this to be too wonky. Okay, so again, we said, right, my reds are in the corners. I can see my blues on this side. I can see my whites on this side. Thank you, Deborah. Sometimes my eyes do a really good job of getting quilt blocks together, and I impress myself. Because usually it's like, what were you thinking? And those quilts are sitting someplace else. And I need 2 of these longer ones. So all my white blocks, all my white strips are done as of this point. So I just need the 2 here and here. And then I'll add my blue, and then the block will be finished. And let me just take a quick station break just to remind everyone, we are working on the Brave and True Americana. This is a sew along. It is, and down here in the corner, by the Fat Quarter Shop. It is free. It's a free pattern, and it's a free sew along. Here is the table runner that we are making. I'll probably have 2 extra blocks in there considering what I'm doing. Here is the actual quilt patterns. You could make the whole quilt. The quilt and the table runner, these patterns, both of them are free. You do need the quilt pattern to get the dimensions for each of the blocks. This one only comes with this, and it comes with this. So the assumption is that you have the pattern. You can get this on on the Fat Quarter Shop website. It is a free pattern. So both this and this are free. You know, sometimes this is free, but you pay for this. No, both of these are free. The easiest way we found out tonight is just to Google both of them. So just Google Brave and True Americana Sew Along. When you click on that first link, you'll go to the Fat Quarter Shop website. Scroll up just about 2 or 3 pictures, and you will see the hey RV, you will see both of the patterns, and they both say 0.00 because they are free patterns. So we are making the log cabins. We're only making 2 of them tonight. We'll make the other 2 next week. I'll show that to you with foundation paper piecing. This is the sew along schedule for when we are to finish each of those blocks. If you choose to participate, when you post your finished product, you will do a hashtag brave and True. Okay, I was about to say, was I reading that right? It's Brave and True SAL, which is for the sew along. So you'll add that tag so that they can see what you are doing and follow along with you. So if you're interested in participating, you can go right onto the Fat Quarter Shop website and pick up this pattern. You can use your stash. This you did not have to buy any of their fabrics. And like I said, you're not using enough of it. I think maybe I used 3 strips, or maybe 4. I think I used 4 probably for the outer blues and whites, where I needed to have some, at least what is that, like a quarter of a yard, somewhere around there. So nobody, usually on most websites you have to buy like a half a yard, so there was no like real requirement for me to purchase the fabric. So I am showing you this from the stash. You could absolutely, you'll see some of the sew-alongs I will be using their fabric lines to show you that as well, but not this one. For this, it could have been scrappier. I was like, I went into my stash and what I found is what I found. So I didn't bother to find 8 different blues and 6 different whites. I was happy with 4 and 3 because that worked for what I needed it to, and I like the look of it overall better than I did the scrappy. They do call for foundation paper piecing with this, so I am squaring this up as I go because I would have squared it up anyway with the foundation paper piecing. So either way, there would have been some squaring up. It's just that, you know, I'm showing it to you without the foundation, and then next week I will show it to you with the foundation paper. Okay, so we are just pressing this again. I'm pressing it closed first, just to kind of flatten those threads out. And then I'm opening it up, and I'm pressing again. And again, we are pressing, not ironing. So you do not see me moving the iron all around because that will distort your fabric, and sometimes it'll make it wave or longer on one side and shorter on the other. So we usually use a dry iron, and we do not, and we just press, we don't iron. Okay. So again, both of those whites are on, so I'm finished with my white. And then I just need to finish up with the blue. So again, I lay this out for me in front of me. Are you pressing and ironing? Oh, Sarah, that's a great question. So yes and no. If I am pressing just the block, I can still use this ironing pad to press just the block. If I am pressing a whole quilt, or ironing, I should say, let me take that back. If I'm ironing a whole quilt, then I will take it to the ironing board because I have more of a surface. And once the whole quilt is being ironed, then I might add a little steam, or I might add a little bit more starch. And if it gets a little distorted, it's not going to be too much. So I will take it to the bigger surface for that reason. Okay, oh, okay. See, you weren't paying attention. You had one more white to go. I sat there and said I finished both of the white. I did not. And that's the reason why we need to put it back in the same order to look at it each time, because I was ready to start the blue. Now, first of all, I saw these sitting off on the side, so I said something was wrong. And second of all, because I would have noticed that that didn't look right, because this blue, let me just show you what would have happened. I would have lined this up and there would have been no seam there. And it wouldn't have crossed over the white. Once I put this second white up here and I line this up, then this should be either the same size, if not a little bit shorter, because I do have to do some squaring. But also I would see that overlap, and I didn't see that, and I was like, wait a minute, something's wrong. And that's because I didn't use these. But that's why, again, it's important to lay it down in the same order so that you can see that. Okay. And again, when you're working, especially with a white on white, you need to make sure that it is faced in the right direction, because ask me how many times my stuff was upside down. Okay, everything is lined up. As this gets bigger, if you are not comfortable not pinning, absolutely at this point, you can use clips or pins. So that is totally up to you, whether you want to use clips or pins. Back in the day, we used pins, but now, you know, this new generation, they have clips. And, you know, I must say that the clips are easier, but we didn't have clips back in the day. Okay. So we're going to line that up. I want to make sure, again, to say that because of the paper piecing, all of these don't line up the way that I would like them to, which is fine because I'm squaring it up. There are some log cabin quilt block patterns where they will absolutely line right up to the edge. But sometimes people are a little off with their stitches, and sometimes it still won't line up, which is why the foundation paper piecing method is also a great method, even though, you know, I probably won't be buying that paper all the time, but I do have 40 sheets of it. So guess who needs to make some more log cabins? Either that, or I'll be putting them in the mail and sending them to somebody for somebody else to make them log cabins. Okay. So again, chain stitch, snip. You'll see it's a little longer, but that's okay because it's all going to work out in the end. I'm just going to press and then press them open. I'm keeping that ruler and my rotary cutter near me because I do have to square these up. And you can see that gap that's hanging over that needs to be squared up. Okay. Oops, didn't do that one. And we will now foundation. I mean, I've learned to like it, but it's not necessarily my thing. It is so much easier to just do it myself, and that's the way that I've always done it. But it's no problem to learn a new way. You know, one of the things that I don't like about it is the picking of the paper, and I don't like the short stitches because how many times did I mess up and then I had to pull them stitches out and I was like, ugh, you know, I need a longer stitch because I know I'm a mess up. Okay, so here we go. So now the white is done. So 1, 2, 3, they're all done. So I need to get the blues done. So I do have two tables that are sitting next to each other. I do have a machine on the table behind this one. And like I said, I found for me that it was easier to lay the board right next to it so that even on my dining room table, I can just press everything in that space and then I don't have to keep getting up. Because ask me how much I'm going to do something if I have to keep getting up. So I need everything in distance. And even like when I would go to quilting classes, we had to get up to iron. And so you know who brought a mobile iron with them when they came to quilting class, because I was like, this is for the birds. I'm tired of getting up. Get up, iron, get up, iron. And with quilting, you're ironing more in some cases than you do if you are just making a garment. And so there's a lot of getting up and sitting down and getting up and sitting down. And I was like, yeah, no. And then if you're in a quilting class, because you're getting up and sitting down and you're getting up and sitting down, or, you know, an open sew, everybody else is doing the same thing too. So then you have to wait for the iron. So I will get a small travel iron. So I wouldn't even take this big iron that I'm using right now, even though it's not really that big. I would take a small travel iron because that can sit right next to my machine, not take up a lot of room, and then I can do that as well. Hey, Joshy. Look, I mentioned that other machine, and here comes Joshy. It's like he can hear me say that I have that other machine set up. Even though he didn't send me my video, so I blame it on Joshy right about now that I haven't used it. That's my story, and that's what I'm sticking with. Okay, one more strip on each side other than the squaring up. Thank you for tapping the screen. Thank you for joining me for the live. Okay, we're going to press these and press them open. And again, if you feel some kind of way, you could use spray starch. But I'll tell you what I find is that when I use the spray starch early, I use it often. So if I wait until the end to do the spray starch to get everything to lay flat, I use less of it. And even with spray starch, sometimes it'll shrink your fabric a little bit. So it's easier to do it once at the end than to keep shrinking. That's right. I'm blaming you. Yeah, you didn't send it to me. Even though I don't know what it is, but you know, yeah, whatever it was, you didn't send it to me. Okay. So again, I am lining up that inner stitch, that inner seam with my ruler so that the line is straight. And I just need to move this down a little bit. I can probably get, let me see, can I get to the next one? Nope. Amazon. About to say, Amazon, you already sent me something? Ooh. You don't need to send me nothing. Okay. Just got something from Amazon today. Okay. We'll cut that off. And we'll cut this one off. And so I am taking my time. I don't rush on this part just because I do want to make sure that my lines are straight. Even though there are wonky log cabin blocks. So, you know, they don't always have to be straight. Hey, Sebs! Okay. And then we have one more. And that'll go from here to here. And from here to here. And my last block is about, don't ask me why, it's about 13.4. So again, each of these blocks in my mind at a 2, and because they were 2.5 inch strips, squared up to be, once you take the seams out, squared up to be about 2 inches. But there are 7 blocks. So that would give you a 14-inch block. So there had to be some squaring up in order to get it down to 12.5. And again, if you were doing the foundation paper piecing, you would be doing some squaring up too, and you will see that next week. Okay, and then here is the last block. I am holding everything, but I am not pulling it because I don't want to distort the block. So be very careful that you are holding it and not pulling. Okay. Don't need that. Okay. And then we'll press this. Now, at this point, if I wanted to, I could spray starch it because the block is finished. And now if I want to square up the whole thing, I can use my best press. And you could use your regular starch. I don't know. I don't know if I just like the smell of best press, because it's like it doesn't leave the residue that a regular starch will leave. Some people have their own little hoodoo formula that they use. I just use the best press. I don't know, now that Joann's is going out of business, I don't know if I'm going to be using best press that often. And you do see me ironing a little bit this time just because I need to cover that whole surface. And before I press this, I do want to make sure that I touch the entire block and that I am using that iron to kind of dry out the starch, because I don't want to cut it while it's wet. If I cut it while it's wet, it may shrink on me a little bit, and I want to make sure that my block is exactly 12.5 inches square. Let me slide my machine back a little bit. But even with this press, I still don't need to like mush down my fabric, because I still don't want to make it wavy and wonky. I do want my strips to be as straight as they possibly can. Okay. Jennifer has every ruler known to man. So I have a 12.5 inch ruler. This one is by June Taylor. I did get this from JoJo's. And if I line up the center block, I'm going to line up my seams and try to get this just about as even as I possibly can. And then trim off everything, which you would do with your foundation paper. And if somebody had her ruler, had her turntable up here that she got from Big Mac, she would not have to do a whole lot of twisting and turning with her body. But because somebody didn't bring it up, she's going to live dangerously. And then here is the finished block. Okay, so this is a 12 inch block. These aren't going to go together. So these are all 12 inches, and that's the great thing about squaring them up. The great thing about log cabin blocks, if I was a little bit more scrappy than this, these could be butted up and they wouldn't match. So I could have scrapped them, but you know, look at the wonderful designs without doing the table runner that you could have. So you could have this way and then two more down at the bottom to create a design. They could all go side by side the same way. You could have your blues on the outside, your whites in the center. So there's just so many different ways that you can play with your log cabin blocks. But so far I have 3 of them done. I have this one, and this one. I'm going to square up one more, and then I will have 3 log cabin blocks done. I will come back next week and I will work on 2 more. And just so I can show you that when I come back next week, I will be using the log cabin quilt block foundation paper. inside of this, and I can show it to you because it's in the pattern. So inside of here, they give you a guide for what your log cabin layout could look like. You do see the picture on the outside. You could have all solid colors, or you could make it scrappy. So your log cabin block could look any way you want. The whole goal of the log cabin is to have a light and a dark, not a white necessarily, a light and a dark. So you could have a light blue and a dark blue. You could have a light blue and a black, but you could have a yellow and a dark blue. So you just want a white, you want a light, and you want a dark. Some people traditionally use a red in the center, but you don't have to. So this could be any block in the center that you wanted it to be. On the inside, however, on the back, on this side, usually that people don't show directions, but I'm going to show them to you because they are in the pattern for the free pattern for the Brave and True Americana quilt. So they're already giving you this, and you will see, because I was like, is it me? But when I went through, these are the same measurements that they gave me. So these measurements are absolutely what's going to work for what we do next week. And then they give you the directions and tell you how to do this and all of the tools that you need to get this done. So all of this is in here. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All of that is in here. Is that Miss Strickland? Oh no, there's a D on the end of that. I have a coworker, Miss Strickland, without a D. So they're all here. You will see the blocks themselves. There are 42 in here, so you can make 42 log cabin blocks. And so here is the template. This is the layout, similar to what we did today. We started with red here. We worked our white, then our blue, then our white, then our blue, then our white, and then our blue. So we followed that same circle to get that done. And then when you trim this up, you're still going to end up with a 12.5-inch block. So either way, it works. But again, if you do not get the paper for this, you can do it the other way. So I did want to show it to you both ways so that you would see it. So again, this is right where I can find it for next week, because ask me if I'll be able to find it when it comes 9 o'clock next week. I do use this ruler. You can get rulers. They do have on the TikTok shop. I think that's in my shop, in my bio, where you can absolutely get these rulers, and they are much cheaper than they were for Joann's. So you could get a 12.5-inch ruler if you're interested in squaring it up. Like I said, it's much easier. Traditionally, before we had rulers like this, we would line the block up on our cutting mat and then just use our ruler to square it up. Nobody has time for that. So now we can take it, and this means that we don't have to use the mat to measure. We just find where that block, that center block, has to go. We can lay everything out, make sure that our lines are nice and straight, or as straight as they possibly can be, because sometimes they're a little wonky depending on how we cut it. So you want it as straight as you can possibly get it. And you could move the fabric, but I just find that when I move the fabric, I make more mistakes. So then I live dangerously, and I just cut this in a way that, you know, everybody says you shouldn't cut it towards your body. And I can just move my hand a little bit. And that's why I'm kind of like doing this a little jacked up. Yeah, that slid a little bit, but that's okay. And I'll take my time going down there as I just do it. I know somebody's like, I'm cringing because she is just getting so close to her arm. Okay. Put those scraps there. And again, here is the final block. So some may be a little skinnier than others, but for the most part, because we squared this up as we went along, you can even see that they're a little off. And so that's fine. So Terry, I have a turntable. It's downstairs. And I was being lazy. So absolutely, I have a turntable. Anna, Big Mats, I have a turntable, and yeah, I didn't think to bring it upstairs. So that's why I didn't have it. But I do have one. Do I save those tiny scraps? So I am throwing these little tiny scraps behind me. So I have all my little tiny scraps in here. And when I have enough of these tiny scraps, then I place them, I make pillows, and then I use them for the stuffing for a pillow. So yes, I absolutely shred up all my little scraps. They all go into my little bucket. So I'm either throwing those scraps into the trash can, or I am throwing them in that little bucket, and then I can use them to stuff pillows. So instead of buying the stuff, look at that! Here's Anna. It's a good thing she didn't see me when I was doing that janky stuff. See? Like, people get called up at the best minute. But Anna, I'm gonna use that back. I have used it, but we're not gonna discuss the fact that I didn't use it right now. So again, thank you everyone who has joined me so far. Let's just recap real quick if you're planning on following the sew along. So again, this is Brave and True Americana. It's a sew along, and it is sponsored by the Fat Quarter Shop. And so here is their address right down here at the bottom. It's www.fatquartershop.com. You can go onto their site and you can get this pattern for the sew along, which is just the table runner, and you can get this pattern right here, this little tiny one. This is the quilt itself. So this table runner is just a one strip of the quilt. You can get both of these, and they are both free. So yeah, Miss Rosalind, you know you were supposed to be up here tonight. So they are both free patterns. There are a ton of free patterns on the Fat Quarter website. You can use your scrap. That is my suggestion. Either your scraps or use your stash, because you really don't need to buy a lot of fabric for it. But you know, you could use possibly fat quarters. You could use a, what do you call it, jelly roll. There are 2.5-inch strips. I probably use no more from each color than 1 to 4 strips max with a fabric, and I still have some fabric left over. This is the schedule for the sew along. So we worked on the log cabin blocks. They are done for the first 2. There are 2 more that I will be working on next week. I am using the foundation paper with that. If Miss Rosalind gets on and she doesn't want to use that foundation paper, she'll be doing it without it. But again, it's easy enough because we're just squaring up the blocks. Then the following week, before April 23rd, so mine are on April 22nd, we will be doing the red star blocks. Those are these blocks here. And then April 30th, by April 30th, we will have this blue block done, and then we'll put the whole thing together. So the whole runner top will be finished by April 30th. And then don't ask me when I'm going to quilt it. But this is the schedule for the sew along. If you're participating in the sew along, even if you don't follow these dates to catch up, then you would type in this hashtag in any of your social media, Brave and True, SAL for sew along, and that way that we can follow and see what you are doing with your process. So again, join us with the Fat Quarter Shop. We would love to see all the work that you are doing as you're working with this. There are other sew alongs coming up that I will be participating in because you know, I've got plenty of time and plenty of stash. I will say this, that the sew alongs are easy enough, like here. You know, we could have knocked out all those log cabin blocks in one day. We could have locked out all of the star blocks in another day. I could have been finished this in a week. But I'm okay with the fact that, you know, we're doing it this way. It gives everybody a chance to catch up. And if you are a beginner, to ask questions, please feel free to DM me. If you get stuck, if you need me to go on live, show you how to do anything, I'm more than willing to do that as well. So here is the pattern again. This is for the sew along with the schedule for the Fat Quarter Shop. They sell fabric. So here are all the fabrics that they recommend it. They are not what you have to use. This is completely scrappy. If you look at their pictures, they used 6 different fabrics for this, for the blue, and 6 for the white. I did not. I only used 3 and 3 because I thought it would just look better, and I didn't have it in my stash to do anyway. Well, I probably do, but I didn't feel like looking for it. So absolutely join us. Again, thank you, everybody, for hanging out with me. What was it, an hour and a half? So we made good time today. So we will have 2 more that we'll do next week. Hey, Miss Cynthia. We'll have 2 more that we'll do next week, and I'll see you then. So I'll probably be on live for something else, but I'll see you again for this next week. So thank you again for 8.8K likes. Thank you so much. Thank you for your gifts. Thank you for tapping the screen. Thank you for joining me, interacting with me, asking questions. I really appreciate it. Here again is the final log cabin block. We did this without the foundation paper. We will show it with the foundation paper so you can see the difference between the two next week. So again, thank you, everyone. I will see you around. Have a great rest of the day. Thank you, Miss Roslyn. Have a great rest of the day. Enjoy your evening. That's the day for those of y'all that are on the California side, you know, on the West Coast. But for us, we're getting ready to go to bed. We'll see you later. Have a great one.